Oh, yes.
Welcome back, folks. Today we're taking a look at the new Transformers Generation Selects number 25, Transmutate. Transmutate is a redeco and moderate retool of the Kingdom Paleotrex toy. So as such, she is a Fossilizer. She has an alt mode of a skeletal T-Rex. And that's a pretty big departure from the character's normal depictions or appearances, right? Because in the Beast Wars cartoon, she was just kind of this misshapen robot that couldn't achieve an alt mode or anything. So in the name of economical retools and keeping trademarks up and getting a Transmutate toy out there, they went and they recolored Paleotrex into Transmutate. I have feelings on this. I think it's not ideal. But at the same time, the only other versions of Transmutate you can possibly own are a Build-A-Figure from a very old, like 10th anniversary Beast Wars line, so most people probably don't have it, or a club exclusive Transmutate figure, which doesn't look anything like her show appearance anyway. So for a lot of people, this will be welcome, right? It's a good enough substitute to get that character on the shelf in some form. Plus, her being a Fossilizer, you could probably arrange her body in a certain way to make her more closely resemble how she's supposed to look and not just look like Paleotrex. So that's something I'll play with as we do this. Anyway, if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at Transmutate's packaging, then we'll open it up, we'll see everything inside, we'll look at the instructions, and then we'll see Transmutate herself in both her beast and robot modes, in addition to her like different weaponizer configurations, all that stuff. I'll be doing some group shots comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So, Transmutate comes in your standard War for Cybertron themed selects box, right? Little mailer box type thing. She's using still like the older War for Cybertron decoration and coloring rather than the new Kingdom stuff, so that's interesting. I guess she was planned before they made that switch. Not a big deal. You can see her label right here, Deluxe Class Transmutate, it's number 25. You see, I got this at GameStop, which is not a place I would normally get a Transformer, but it's just the first place she's really becoming available here in the US. This says $22.99, but they actually had her on sale, so it was like 18 something, so that was awesome. Paying like old school Deluxe prices. You get your War for Cybertron logo up here, and then some legal stuff, wrap around to the image, and that's it as far as outside of the box. Now I've gone and cut the label here, so we can open this up. So, open it. You get your standard War for Cybertron little inner packaging design. And then here we get Transmutate. And she's up on a little cardboard insert like they've been doing with all the modern War for Cybertron stuff. So, kind of cool, right? It's more environmental friendly, but at the same time, kind of makes these pointless because I usually hold on to the selects boxes so I can like put them back in there. Something nice and safe, but oh well. Move that out of the way. And then we get the instructions for Transmutate. See, they just have her configured and posed just like old Paleotrex. And her name here, Maximal symbol. I don't think she was ever actually officially a Maximal, but you know, I guess they got a brand or something. Got her number. We open this up, and we get straight into the transformation to skeletal T-Rex mode. So there's that. Then you go to the back, and we just get the how-to for her two different like weaponized configurations. Interestingly, they're just using Warpath again, so it looks like they just kind of copy that straight out of Paleotrex's instructions. I actually don't recommend using Warpath for these because he doesn't balance very well, but there is that. So no surprises in the instructions other than a new head render, but I guess I wasn't expecting much more than that. And now we get to take a look at Transmutate's very, very cool looking beast mode. You can see it has her traditional colors of this light, almost sky blue and this, kind of bronzish color. And then she also gets these kind of bright gold highlights on the teeth, on this little head crest here, on the little blade underneath. What do you call this? I forget. It's like the wishbone, basically, right? I don't know. I need to go back to school, guys. I've been out of school for far too long. So overall, she does look very cool. She's doing her own thing. I mean, the colors, they do clash a bit, but they are her classic colors, so, it's kind of what you expect. And they do at least have some nice gradient going on here. You can see at the ankles, you get a blue fade to the feet. You get it on the back here. So it isn't, too disjointed looking. You get a nice little paint wash on the tail. You get it right here in like the middle area. So I think, for having to take a T-Rex skeleton and give it Transmutate's colors, I think they did a pretty phenomenal job. And I really love the gold teeth. I think they really make it stand out and look just that much fancier. And here's a quick shot of Transmutate with her two mold mates, the Predacons Paleotrex, and the Netflix spoiler box exclusive, Skelevor, who is a very, very awesome looking toy in his own right. And Skelevor is kind of interesting because he seems to follow more of the trend of a character like Tricranius, where he has an elemental property to him. Also Dracodon, if you count him as a fossilizer, because he has like a radioactive look to him. You know, Skelevor is some kind of an amethyst-like crystal. So he really, honestly, looks more like one of the Maximal fossilizers than he does a Predacon, but they decided to make him a Predacon, probably because he was packaged with Megatron. So instead, our Maximal T-Rex gets to be Transmutate. I don't think she matches the other Maximals as thematically, but she does at least have a fairly bright color scheme to go with them. Then, of course, our first version of the mold, Paleotrex here, he's just made to look like old fossils, you know, bone that has since started, you know, being replaced with rock, so it's got that brownish color to it. He's a much more realistic-looking T-Rex skeleton than either of these two. But I still think they all look very, very cool in their own right. Alright guys, real quick, I'm going to show you a secret exclusive mode you can only find here in this review. It's called I Am Hurt. For anyone who just had traumatic memories from their childhood resurface, you can thank me later. Alright, now we get Transmutate in her axe configuration, and I've decided to partner her up with Pipes, mostly just because I thought it'd be funny to have a little Autobot wielding such a big axe. So you can see, same layout as Paleotrex. You get the giant bone axe here. You get this T-Rex claw thing going on, using her head as a mace, which is pretty ghastly in light of how she died. And then you get the big bone claw backpack, which I think is, you know, one of the cooler elements out of all the fossilizers. So easily one of the better modes. Oh yeah, don't forget the chest plate shield here. Yeah, one of the better, you know, weaponizer or fossilizer modes out of the whole bunch. It's one that, you know, feels pretty sturdy, is adequately cool looking, but also practical, so I like it. Okay, now we get to see her sword configuration, and it's kind of similar to the axe one. You swap some pieces around to create the sword instead of an axe. For your claw backpack, you just pull the claw part off, which turn these into some kind of cannons, and then you move the claws or feet down here to become little boosts for height. And honestly, Pipes can use it. This actually makes him look decently tall. And unlike the first figure that I ever you know, paired up with this wave, which was Warpath, he actually balances very, very well, especially because of the placement of, you know, where his 5mm port is on his feet, where it's more toward the front, vice the back. So this really works for him. And because he's not an overly heavy toy himself, he doesn't have much of an issue standing on these little dino stilts here. So, again, I think it's another win. Having looked at all three of the main Deluxe Fossilizer molds, I think that this mold, the Paleotrex one, is easily the best when it comes to these armor-up modes. They're all just very cohesive looking, and in both cases, use every one of the toy's parts. So just like with Paleotrex, you do get a lot going on here. So now you just get it in different colors and, you know, a Maximal. And now we get to see Transmutate in her default robot mode. So this is what you get if you follow the instructions. It's the most common form used for the CGI renders and the stock photography. And in a vacuum, and just as a fossilizer, it's totally fine. As a toy of Transmutate, however, I find it severely lacking. Like, almost as bad as Combiner Wars Huffer lacking, where they just slapped a Transmutate head on a completely unrelated body and called it a day. And that's something that made me very disappointed with this figure when it was revealed, because it's like, man, you guys couldn't do more with that? Now, if you're okay with this, and you don't care about the screen accuracy, that's great. You'll be very happy with what we get here. However, if you want something a little closer to home, you do have a couple of options. The first option is actually an official one. It's an alternate configuration shown in some of the stock photos of the toy. And it's not a huge change, but it goes through some lengths to put her a little bit more on model. And the way you achieve that mode is first, let's go ahead, we're going to swap this sword into the other hand. Now the sword's not actually shown in those stock photos, it's left out, but yeah, I don't want to leave parts laying around, so we'll just put her sword in this hand here. Give it to her there. Alright, and then you're basically inverting this arm right here. So you unplug it, separate it at the elbow. You're going to plug this joint in here, like so. And then you get this right here. And what you're going to do is take your little blade bit, pull this tab down, you're going to plug it into this hole in the thumb and create something that's kind of sort of akin to the cannon that she normally wields on this arm. Obviously, you know, some imagination required here. And then some of the stock photos take this a step further, and I think it's specifically the Takara ones, and they actually pull the head out most of the way. So extend it at least about, you know, 3/4 out or so to give her that long craning neck she has from the show. And then just kind of pose it up, maybe haunch her over a little bit, give her that deformed look. And here we go. This is a somewhat more screen accurate take on Transmutate. And I think this is how I'm going to personally store her on the shelf, just to set her apart from her mold mates and make her look a little bit more like the character she's supposed to be. So that's a cool option you have. Now's also the time to show off that neat little screaming mouth feature that they tooled into her. So she actually has 2 hinges, one at the base of the neck to allow her to look up and down a little bit, like that. And then she's got one here, so you can recreate that sonic scream she has from the show. And it's pretty nightmare-inducing, but it's very on brand for her. So you can have her, you know, screaming, you could have her with her mouth open a little bit like she's talking, or have it shut. You have a lot of options here, and options are always good. So, that covers all of the official transformations that you can achieve. There is one more I want to show you. I don't normally delve into fan modes, but I found this one to be probably your best option, and it was posted by a fan, you know, some time ago. And I've gone and just put a slight spin on it, a little bit of a modification, just to put it up to my personal standards. But what you want to do is go ahead and remove all this. All these here. You're going to keep the neck pretty much as it is already. Take the chest plate off like so. Separate these out. Alright, so this area is actually going to become one of her arms. And the fan mode had them like this. I actually think it looks better if you rotate it around a little bit. Give her kind of a fuller looking arm here. Also gives her a double jointed elbow, just for added posability. So you give her this arm here. And then you take this, and reattach it like you do for the standard robot mode. And rotate it, which way was it? This way. Make it look a little fuller. And then you're going to attach this thing to kind of sort of replicate her cannon. It's not perfect, and it's not a very posable arm, but kind of looks like her cannon, kind of sort of. Then you're going to take the spine piece, attach it here, bend it forward, and take these, plug them into the sides of it, straighten those little heel spurs out, and then you're attaching the dino feet. Oops. And then the last thing you do here, just to help fill out this area and keep her from having a hole right there, looking kind of awkward, is you put the little chest piece right here. All right, and then you're gonna bend, oops, gotta rotate these knee joints. There you go. You can see it's not very sturdy. It is a fan mode. So this leg you want to bend backwards, chicken style, because one of her legs is supposed to bend backwards. So you get that. This one bends forward, and then you have to fiddle with her and get everything to stand in a certain position. Now I gotta warn you, this is not a very stable configuration, and it's going to be very dependent on your toy's individual tolerances. My figure does not handle this well, and it's mostly because of this right here, where this hip joint just wants to fall off. It's not got a lot of friction there. So I have to very, very carefully balance her. In fact, I don't even know if I can properly balance her without her just flopping over, but we're gonna try. We're gonna try. Okay, don't move, don't breathe. This is what it's supposed to look like. Makes her quite tall, but definitely gives her a configuration that's a lot closer to how she's supposed to look. It's not perfect. Like I said, tolerances are very important. If your toy has somewhat loose connections like mine, you're going to find it very difficult to pose her in a way where she's not just going to fall over or fall apart. It's also not the prettiest thing to look at. Her cannon arm does not articulate at the elbow at all, so it just sticks out straight. And then her other arm here doesn't actually have a hand. It has a peg, a lot like Arachnite there. But it's still a really cool looking mode. And honestly, I would not have minded this being the official robot mode, provided Hasbro, tweak the tolerances to make her more stable in this. Because I think this has a lot of potential and, is the closest you can get her to looking like her classic form. And here's our group shot with her mold mates in their robot modes, so you can just see how they compare to each other. And this is a moment where the modular nature of Fossilizers really comes to shine, because it does give you the freedom to adjust your Transformers in a way to help set them apart from one another. Now, we already saw in Transmutate's case how you can configure her into official or unofficial robot modes. But even when it comes to these two, you have some options that stay within the realm of officiality. You have your standard robot modes, but you can also flip these helmets down to give them more of a, freaky skull face. So if you have a certain character that you prefer that look on, personally, I think Paleotrex probably benefits from it the most. So you go ahead and close that up. Now he looks like a pretty evil Predacon character. And that allows Skelevor to keep his more knightly appearance due to all that, silver on the faceplate. So you do have some really nice options for having three of the same mold and having them all stand out from each other in one way or another. Now for what is, in my opinion, the most important group shot for this video. We get a chance to compare our new Transmutate with her two previous figures. The one on the right here represents her most screen-accurate figure to date, taken directly from the Beast Wars cartoon. And this thing is actually a Build-A-Figure from the 10th anniversary Beast Wars toys. It is somewhat posable, allowing this leg and both arms to move, as well as the head to, go up and down, turn, all that. But it is still, kind of a cheap PVC figure. It is prone to bending and warping, as you can kind of see on the legs there. So it's not an awesome action figure, but it's a good display piece and, does look really good next to your Beast Wars or Kingdom toys. Then we get the club exclusive Transmutate, which is supposed to represent the character in an alternate timeline where she never did get sent to Earth, that she awoke on Cybertron in an undamaged stasis pod, which meant that her mind was intact, her body, wasn't all disfigured, though she still had, certain mental quirks that just seemed inherent to the character. So while she did still perceive the world in a very different way, she wasn't maybe as, say, slow as her more mutated form. And then we get this. Admittedly, my least favorite Transmutate toy, as far as, it being a toy of the character. As far as it just being a fun fossilizer to play with, it's totally fine. It's just one more fossilizer to add to your pack, to add to a combiner, or, whatever you want to do. But as far as a Transmutate figure, it does make me happy that these two exist. Now, I also understand that these are both very difficult to come by. This thing was released, 15 years ago. You had to collect an entire wave of, Beast Wars figures, and if you didn't get it then, good luck finding it now. And then this figure being a club exclusive is equally difficult to find and is, pretty expensive on the secondary market. Plus, it may not be everybody's cup of tea because it represents a different form of Transmutate. Though I do very much like it, and I think that the RC toy was a really good base to, build Transmutate off of. So these two are still my favorites, but this one, it's a good stand-in if you don't already have some version of the character. And like we saw, you can configure her in different ways to give yourself your preferred form for the character, whether you want her more or less screen accurate, more playable. This toy at least does give you a lot of options. One thing I will point out is that this new figure uses a much darker shade of gold than either of these two. Our PVC figure, gets it the closest with being almost a silvery shade of gold and, having it be very shiny. This one, it's more or less the same color, but it's a lot more flat. It doesn't have that nice sheen to it, but that's also all paint, whereas this is, a plastic color, so it's a bit different. Personally, I do prefer the older colors here. I think they're a little bit nicer looking. The newer toy looks like she's very tarnished, like she looks kind of like an old penny. So again, it's just another way I prefer the classic toys to this newer one. And this completes our look at Kingdom Transmutate. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this figure. I do like it for being just another Fossilizer to add to the collection, and one that takes a really unique color scheme and just kind of makes it work. A gold-colored bone dinosaur is not something I ever thought I'd want, but getting it in hand, I think it's really cool. I hate it as a Transmutate figure. It's just so far off for me. The only thing that I really like about it is the whole sonic screen gimmick with the opening mouth. But other than that, I'd almost prefer to just keep her in dino mode and just pretend she's someone else, because I don't think it's a good figure of Transmutate. Like I said just a moment ago, if you don't have some figure of her, it works. I mean, it's better than trying to track down the original figure, because that thing goes for insane amounts of money. And, if you want something that maybe scales a little better with your current toys and, is more compatible with them, this may be a better choice. But as a longtime collector, I'm not really crazy about it. So it's one of those things where I can only really recommend it to people who haven't been in the game a long time and don't already have the old versions, either, the Beast Wars based one or the, pre-Beast Wars one. Because this one really just, it's very disappointing. It really gives me those Combiner Wars Huffer vibes, and that's not at all a good thing. So, it's recommended with an asterisk. Of course, that is just my view of this toy. Now I don't know what you all think of it. Am I being too harsh on this figure? Am I letting my expectations cloud my judgment? Or do you agree? Do you think this thing is just a big waste of time? It's a real letdown compared to what could have been? Any and all feedback's always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at Transformers Kingdom Transmutate. And with all that said, I will see you next time.